Discover the unexpected connection, how one blind date transformed an Italian mafia boss forever. Tony, the broker, Romano sat in a bustling diner, his fingers anxiously tracing the rim of a chipped coffee cup. Around him, families enjoyed their meals, laughter spilling over tables as the smell of grilled sausages engulfed him. It felt worlds away from the cold dread of his life encircled by mafia ties. A blind date orchestrated by his mother, a connection he had initially resisted. He wanted no part in any romantic notion. Companionship meant obligation, distraction, and he sworn to remain untouchable. Yet here he was, trapped by familial duty, fingers twitching with tension. He scanned the door like a hawk watching prey, muscles coiling tight, every instinct still sharp from years in the shadows. With a sinking heart, he acknowledged his truth, a network of loyalty chains around him, thickening by the day. His mind raced, torn between the suffocating legacy of crime and the longing to break free. Could a life defined by the greased gears of intimidation truly foster anything but despair? The bell above the door chimed, and in strode Lily, a radiant spirit with an aura that lit the dim diner. Tony felt an unexpected calm wash over him, breaking through the soot of his haunted thoughts. Her laughter rang like a melody, sweet and contagious. It shattered the grim playbook of his life. She was a schoolteacher, advocating for youth in a world he had long forsaken. The contrast between them felt monumental yet charged with magnetism. As their conversation unfolded, they connected in surprising ways. Each story she shared about overcoming her own childhood struggles echoed in his chest, a long-buried sympathy awakening. He saw the fire within her, a glaring flame in stark contrast to his calculated reserve. Warmth threatened to melt the icy facade he had erected, challenging his entire existence. Could decency and sincerity prevail in a heart marred by ruthless darkness? Yet as the air thickened with her spirit, ominous shadows lurked in the corners of his mind. A sudden buzz from his phone jolted him, an old rival's text flashing across the screen, a warning hinting at impending violence, reaffirming the reality he had once tried to escape. How could he protect this enchanting woman from the nightmare he was chained to? They had only just begun to connect, but the darkness crept forward like a predator, ready to pounce. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tony forced himself to look back into Lily's eyes, searching for answers, but found only softness that contradicted the chaos brewing within him. As they strolled through a nearby park, he grappled with his thoughts. Could love really redeem a man held captive by the shackles of his bloodline? His chest felt as if it could implode with urgency. The scent of blooming flowers surrounded them, but his heart was suffocated beneath the weight of an unrelenting past. Every fiber of his being screamed for honesty, yet the words felt like lead in his throat. Could he confess the truth of his life without becoming a beast in her eyes? As sirens wailed in the distance, each note echoed louder than the last, a siren song promising violence. Time stretched thin, and Tony realized he stood at a precipice. One misstep could plunge him into the abyss of his former life. Torn between a love unfurling in stark contrast to his violent reality, he faced a choice that would irrevocably shape the course of his existence. Would he muster the courage to abandon the very legacy that was suffocating him? Or would he slip back into the familiar embrace of darkness? The air crackled with tension, unanswered questions swirling around them, leaving an unsettling heaviness as dread and hope battled for survival in his heart. In the days that followed, Tony's mind oscillated between the warmth of Lily's laughter and the persistent specter of his past. Every normal interaction became a flickering reflection of his dilemma. He felt her presence lingering in everything: the vibrant colors of the park, the simple joy in children's laughter, and the calm of evening streets. Yet, each reminder also pulled him into tumultuous thoughts, spiraling him deeper into anxiety about the looming threat. On Wednesday night, as he stood before his mirror, meticulously adjusting his tie, a wave of uncertainty washed over him. Could he be the man he yearned to be, or would he always be a pawn in a merciless game of crime? Meeting Lily sparked in him a desire that felt both invigorating and treacherous, a desire to shed the cloak of fear and doubt that had shielded him through years of brutality. The reflection of his own ambition clashed with his reality. He brushed a hand over the stubble on his chin, mentally rehearsing the delicate confession he planned to share with her. Yet, the unavoidable consequences clawed at him from the shadows. Would death and betrayal be her fate, should he dare to be honest? Should he risk their burgeoning relationship for the off chance that love could conquer the unyielding darkness of his past? The tension exploded in him the moment he stepped into the cafe where they had agreed to meet. The atmosphere felt heavier. As he settled into a corner booth, his mind raced. What if his rival had discovered his weakness? The front door chimed, and a chill encased his spine. He turned, surprised to see Lily entering, her eyes alive with excitement. "Hey, you. Sorry I'm late." She beamed, her genuine joy melting the iceberg of his resolve. Tony felt the layers of his defenses slip. As she slid into the seat opposite him, he noticed the light reflecting off her hair, setting his internal chaos momentarily at ease. Her mere presence seemed to drown out the distant sirens and menacing texts on his phone. "I was just thinking," he started, but the words faltered as he searched her expressive face for signs of apprehension. Yet all he saw were trust and sincerity. "About honesty. What do you mean?" She tilted her head, pushing a stray hair back behind her ear, her curiosity lingering between the present joy and an unknown concern. He hesitated, the weight of his truth constricting. Instead, he took a breath. "I think it's important we're real with each other." The truth lurked at the edge of his tongue, but he could feel the tremor of fear that came with it. "Of course," she replied, mischief illuminating her features. "I can handle it. Hit me with your worst." Her laughter was infectious, yet the gravity of his world loomed large in contrast. Tony's heart raced, propelled by a sudden surge of determination. "Okay, but it's not something light." Just then, the cafe door swung open with a painful creak, jarring his focus. His heart dropped, a familiar figure emerged, shadow stretching across their table. It was an old associate, one with ties to his past. Marino, the very rival whose text had haunted him days ago. Marino's grin spoke volumes amidst the tension settling heavily in the air. Tony glanced at Lily, her excitement replaced by concern as her eyes flicked from him to the approaching threat. The confrontation he dreaded was upon him. How could he protect Lily and himself without revealing his darkest secrets? Suddenly, the path ahead felt insurmountable, every instinct screaming at him to safeguard her from the storm about to break. What would he choose, revealing his true self, risking everything for love, or drawing her deeper into a life of violence and chaos? Tony realized he no longer left his future solely to choice. The consequences of his past had arrived, demanding to be settled. The moment had come to face the shadow that loomed over his life, but could he confront it without tearing apart the new beginnings he longed to secure? The cafe seemed to shrink around Tony as he absorbed Marino's presence. He felt the air thicken, his body taut with dread. Every instinct urged him to flee, to pull Lily away and shield her from the danger that was quickly creeping upon them. But instead, he sat frozen, the weight of his choices tangible under the gaze of his nemesis. Marino sauntered over, an unsettling confidence radiating from him. "Tony," he said, his voice dripping with mockery, "fancy seeing you here. This seems cozy." His eyes flicked to Lily, and an insidious smirk curled his lips. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Lily's brows furrowed, and she exchanged a wary glance with Tony. He could see the concern etched onto her face, her naive enthusiasm replaced with confusion. "We were just," he started, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Just what?" Marino leaned in closer, the taunting glint in his eyes heightening Tony's anxiety. "Planning your escape from reality?" Tony took a deep breath, heart pounding, forcing himself to remember that he was more than his past, more than this game of shadows. However, the echo of all his mistakes closed in around him, a fierce reminder of the stakes at play. He couldn't allow Marino to corner him. He needed to assert control. "Marino, this isn't the time," he stated, voice low but firm. "This is personal." Marino chuckled, a sound devoid of genuine mirth. "Oh, I think it's very much my business," he replied. His focus sharpened on Lily. "You see, darling, he has quite the history. Crime runs deep in his veins." The implication hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Tony's insides twisted with rage and embarrassment. How could he protect the fragile connection with Lily while desperate to not tarnish her view of him? He felt cornered, both by his rival and the truth he had withheld. "Stop!" Lily's voice cut through the tension. Her eyes flared, and Tony watched her gather the strands of courage she didn't know she possessed. "I don't know what past you're referring to, but I'm here with Tony, not you. So unless you have something useful to say, I suggest you leave us alone." A surge of pride swelled in Tony, there was strength in her defiance. Yet there was still fear that Marino would leverage this newfound strength against them. He needed to take control of the narrative. "Lily, please," Tony interjected gently, sensing the potential fallout. "I'll handle this." Marino laughed heartily, but there was malice beneath the surface. "Handle this? Is that what you call it? The weak hide behind excuses, Tony. It's what you do." Shaking off the provocations, Tony focused inward, recognizing the moment he faced, the chance to redefine who he was. Would he be propelled by fear or grant himself the permission to battle this shadow? Could vulnerability intertwine with his strength? "Look, Marino, I'm done with your games," he declared, newfound resolve igniting his tone. "I'm here to make a choice, and it starts with stepping away from you." The words flowed with an undeniable conviction. For the first time, Tony felt the truth liberate him rather than bind him. Marino appeared taken aback, momentarily disarmed. "Oh. And what choice is that?" "Today I choose honesty," Tony said, his gaze steady, seeking Lily's reassuring presence in the midst of chaos. "I choose her." As Marino's smile faded, the atmosphere shifted. The tension in the cafe transformed into vibrational anticipation, a collective understanding that the battleground of Tony's life was shifting. With his adrenaline surging, Tony felt an exhilarating surge of clarity wash over him. The stakes were rising, and he was finally ready to confront them head-on. A silence fell, heavy yet charged with potential. This moment could redefine everything, the start of a new game in the twisted chess match of his life. But as Marino's glare hardened, Tony understood that the ultimate confrontation lay ahead, an inevitable clash of wills that would demand the utmost of his resolve and fortitude. Would he emerge unscathed, or would his past finally come calling with consequences too great to bear? Tony's heart raced as the weight of his declaration settled in the air, filling the cafe with a palpable tension. Marino's expression shifted, the mockery in his eyes replaced with a simmering fury, and Tony braced himself for the backlash. He had laid his heart bare, unearthing the entirety of his conflicted self, and he was poised for whatever came next. "Honesty, huh?" Marino sneered, his voice laced with disbelief. "How noble. But you think that's all it takes?" He leaned closer, a shark smelling blood. "What about the truth that's hidden beneath your skin? You think you can just decide who you are and leave the past behind?" Tony inhaled sharply, aware of the truth resting in Marino's accusation. But that past felt less like a chain pulling him down and more like a stepping stone he was ready to leap off of. He had decided to face it, to redefine himself in spite of it. "I don't need your permission to be better. This isn't your game anymore, Marino." Every word rang with conviction, tightening his grip on the power of self-acceptance. Yet deep within, Tony wavered on a knife's edge. The walls he had built were starting to crack. Could he completely dismantle them without collapsing under the weight of vulnerability? "I will be who I am, and I will make sure that Lily knows the truth," not the shadow you cast," he added, his tone steadying as he searched for her gaze. Marino's laugh was a bitter echo, slicing through the moment like a knife. "You really believe that? People like you can't change. You're just a coward in a fancy suit." The barb struck close to home, igniting a flicker of doubt. He wanted to shout that he was done being defined by the judgments of others, yet the remnants of insecurity surged, threatening to drown him. But as he anchored himself in Lily's unwavering stare, the fire inside him rekindled. He wouldn't shy away from this moment. "Let me tell you something," he fired back, every syllable deliberate. "Yesterday doesn't dictate tomorrow. I have the power to redefine what I want to be, and I refuse to let someone who revels in destruction have a say in my life." Just then, Lily stepped forward with conviction, her presence firm against the backdrop of animosity. "You think bully tactics are enough to scare us?" Her voice pierced through the room, infused with a strength that surprised even Tony. "You don't intimidate me or Tony. And believe me, we're ready for whatever you throw our way." Marino faltered, his bravado cracking for the first time. The tables had turned, resistance sparked a hope within Tony that he had nearly buried. Maybe the connection he felt with Lily was far deeper than either of them realized. Maybe they could be a fortress against the storm swirling around them. Yet as the intensity of the standoff escalated, Tony felt a primal instinct rise within him. The cravings to fight back, to punch through this veil of terror and anger, battled against his desire to walk a different path. "Walk away while you can." Marino barked, the threat clear in his tone, but something in Tony's chest surged louder. This was no time for retreat. "Not until I'm done," Tony responded fiercely. In that moment, he felt stripped bare, and yet, paradoxically, cloaked in strength. The confidence that he could reclaim his future surged through his veins. As if sensing a shift in power, the specter of Marino began to look more like a trapped animal than a wily fox. Yet awareness lingered. This wasn't over. The inevitable consequences loomed on the horizon, darkness lurking just beyond the corner. The true battle lay not just with Marino but within himself, within the reconstruction of his identity. "I'm not afraid of confrontation, Marino," Tony said, steadfast. "I'm ready for anything. Come what may." Outside, rain began to fall, a rhythmic percussion matching the storm in his heart. The fate of their newfound closeness trembled in the balance. But was he truly ready to face the darker recesses of his past that hung over him like clouds ready to burst? He knew the next step would be a defining one: hope or despair, light or shadow, his past or his future. The next encounter loomed large, and with it, the potential for irrevocable change. Would he survive the reckoning of his choices? The rain pelted down harder now, an unrelenting reminder of the storm inside Tony. He stood firm, his breath steadying as he anchored himself in this pivotal moment. Marino's intimidating facade had crumbled, revealing the media-fueled puppet, masking deep-seated insecurities and fears behind bravado. And as the tension crackled like lightning overhead, Tony felt a flicker of clarity cutting through the chaos. Lily's presence was a beacon, illuminating a path forward that had once seemed distant. The notion of vulnerability still nagged at him, prompting memories of shame and anger to surface. But he had chosen authenticity over fear. With a decisive resolve, Tony stepped back from the precipice of old patterns. Holding Garcia's gaze, he said, "This isn't just about me. You've messed with people who matter to me, and I won't allow it." The words exploded from him with a conviction he hadn't known he possessed, sounding foreign yet powerful. Marino's attempt to intimidate faded, replaced by palpable unease. "You really think you two can just upend everything I've built? You're delusional," he spat, though Tony could see the fear flickering behind his eyes. It was the fear of losing control, of facing the world stripped of his vicious mask. For the first time in weeks, Tony felt an unfamiliar sense of power. What had been his greatest weakness, the lingering grip of his past, could now be reframed as his greatest strength. He was learning to channel this conflicting energy, transforming insecurities into an unwavering will to fight for his truth. But there was still a journey ahead, shadows clinging to him like old friends reluctant to let go. "Tell me, Marino," Tony pressed, each word deliberate, "what does winning mean to you? Fear? Control? Or perhaps something more? You're so consumed by the need to dominate, you've lost sight of what truly matters." At this, Marino faltered again, revealing a crack, and Tony pressed further. Lily stood close, grounding him. There was strength in their synergy, an unspoken agreement that honesty beyond fear was worth fighting for. They were partners on this road, a connection forming that was more significant than either had anticipated. Yet, as the challenge simmered, Tony's heart pounded with the weight of growing responsibilities. Confronting Marino was just the tip of the iceberg. He brushed a hand across the table, reveling in the tactile sensation, a physical reminder of his presence. He was here. Suddenly, Marino leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You have no idea the kind of people you're messing with. This isn't just a game for me. You're playing with fire, and it'll burn you." Tony's resolve wavered but steadied as he shot back, "Maybe you should have thought about that before you chose this path." His stance reflected the struggle to maintain equilibrium. He could no longer afford to tread lightly on ashes of the past. "Just remember, when this all comes crashing down, you'll have only yourself to blame," Marino growled, stepping back, losing his footing in the confrontation. He was unraveling before them, and it exhilarated Tony. The cafe swam in the dim light, becoming a battleground where shadows battled spirits. Though the rain continued to fall outside, the atmosphere inside swirled with uncertainty and potential. What lay ahead didn't just hold the threat of Marino's vengeance, it meant confronting his own truths that buzzed just beneath the surface, forging a way to embody the man he aspired to be for Lily. "I'm ready, Marino," Tony asserted, steeling himself. "This time, I define who I am. The past won't control me anymore." And just as the storm outside began to ease, a new clarity washed over him, hinting at a new pathway firing in his mind. The next confrontation wouldn't just be with Marino, it would be the battle within, a reckoning of sorts. If he didn't face it head-on, he'd never break free. What would happen when the shadows of the past collided with potential for growth? It was no longer a question of survival, it was about transformation, his journey toward self-discovery had truly begun. But with every step forward, there lay the uncertainty of what darkness awaited him next. Tony took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his own words hanging in the air between them. The confrontation with Marino had peeled back layers of denial he hadn't even realized he was carrying. What once felt daunting now crackled with a sense of potential. Defiance coursed through his veins, challenging him to do more than just stand his ground. The cafe echoed the tension as he turned away from the table, feeling Lily's warm gaze on him. "We need to start moving forward, strategically, and wisely," he said, letting the remnants of adrenaline calm his thoughts. "This isn't over, and we cannot underestimate Marino." Lily nodded, her determination shining through her concern. "What's the plan?" He'll retaliate. We have to be prepared." As they stepped back into the rain, Tony understood that this was more than just battling Marino, it was a journey into the unknown. He had to transform himself, embrace a new aspect of his identity, and face both external adversaries and his internal struggle with authenticity. The image of Marino's face flickering with uncertainty haunted him. Was it possible to use that knowledge against him? Tony thought about how he had felt standing firm, lulled by the adrenaline, his self-assurance rising in the face of adversity. He remembered the way Lily had stood beside him, a partner forged in fire. It strengthened the resolve buzzing inside him, but the urgency to act loomed ahead. "Let us find out what Marino's vulnerable spots are," he suggested, his voice steadier now, ignited by a newfound determination. "We'll gather information, figure out who he's dealing with, and prepare ourselves for whatever is coming." As they walked, Tony's mind raced with possibilities. Deep within, he felt the stirrings of untapped resourcefulness. His past experiences, mistakes, lessons learned, and the painful memories woven through his life held truths he knew he could now confront rather than avoid. With every step, shadows from his past threatened him, but he was learning to embrace them, turning fear into fuel. They decided to meet at a nearby diner known for its discreet vibe. Over coffee that felt more like a ritual, they plotted their next moves, knowing that knowledge was power. The energy shifted as they began to work in tandem, exchanging ideas that evolved into actionable strategies. "Listen," Lily said, pulling back to meet his eyes with unwavering conviction. "We need to consider how we implement these changes in ourselves, too. What we're doing isn't just about Marino. It's about us, becoming what we want to be." Recalling how vulnerability had nearly choked him, he appreciated the reminder to stay true to himself amidst this chaos. "It's as if we're being forged in this storm," he replied, understanding the layers of their situation. "If we can embrace who we become in light of all of this, the confrontation will be just one more chapter. We can rewrite the narrative." As their plans solidified, Tony delved into past experiences, seeking hidden strengths. A distinct memory surfaced: his childhood fascination with storytelling. From weaving fables to spinning tales of survival, he realized he could craft a narrative, influencing not only his own future but also how he would confront Marino. What had begun as a simple act of resistance transformed into an awakening of creative potential, leading him to devise an entirely new strategy, one where Marino would not only be confronted, but outsmarted. Unexpected connections were forming as Tony fully realized that vulnerability didn't signify weakness, it opened doors to ferocious resilience and ingenuity hidden within. Yet, the shadow of doubt still flickered at the edges of his consciousness. The path ahead was still filled with uncertainties, and they would likely face resistance from Marino and his allies. But fueled by the prospect of working alongside Lily, their synergy blooming, Tony felt the urgent pulse of transformation. He closed his eyes for a moment, picturing the next confrontation, engulfed in shadows yet dazzling with possibility. Just as determination settled firmly within him, a new question nagged at his core: what awaited him in the shadows they had yet to explore, hidden beneath layers of his own psyche? The moment felt charged, like the quiet before an impending storm. Tony's thoughts swirled, a tempest of determination and doubt intertwining. With Lily beside him, he felt emboldened, their partnership was a pillar of strength. Yet, the enormity of what lay ahead pressed down like an anchor, threatening to sink his resolve. They were no longer just playing defense against Marino, each step they planned brought them closer to a confrontation that would test every ounce of his newly discovered courage. As they settled into a booth at the diner, the flickering neon lights outside cast ghostly shadows across their faces. The aroma of brewed coffee and sizzling bacon mingled in the air, but the warmth of the environment barely penetrated the cold dread that crept along Tony's spine. He needed to regather his focus, channeling the tremors within into actionable resolve. "Let us map it out," Tony said, spreading napkins in front of them. His voice was steady, cutting through the churning chaos in his mind. "What do we know about Marino's operations? Specific vulnerabilities?" Lily leaned in, her brows furrowed as she took notes. "He runs a tight ship, but every ship has a leak. We need to figure out his personality, his habits, maybe even who he trusts." The conversation danced between strategy and insight, but Tony was increasingly aware of another battle, the one festering inside him. His doubts whispered insidiously, they questioned his capabilities, prodding him to reconsider everything he'd built up to this point. Hadn't he spent too long sidelined by self-doubt? It gnawed at him now, reminding him of past failures, opportunities missed because of fear. But the flickering shadow of Marino's menacing presence pulled him back. Tony grasped the edge of the table, grounding himself. "We can't let fear dictate how we approach this. It's time to reframe this struggle as a chance to showcase our strengths." Lily's eyes sparkled with understanding, and he could see the shift in her demeanor, eager, ready to dive into the depths of action. "What if you use your storytelling gift against him? You know how to weave a compelling narrative. Perhaps we can create a scenario where Marino finds himself in an unexpected position." The suggestion caught Tony off guard, yet it resonated with him. He recalled his childhood days, fabricating tales that captivated his audience. It sparked something within him, a blend of creativity and strategy he hadn't fully recognized as valuable until this moment. Right, he murmured, piecing together the threads of his past with his present ambitions. If I can create a narrative that highlights his weaknesses while presenting myself as the strong contender he never saw coming, we might be able to disrupt his confidence. Lily smiled, the atmosphere around them shifting from uncertainty to palpable excitement. But as they continued to strategize, a shadow crept back into his mind. What did that new narrative mean for him personally? Would he still recognize himself after weaving such a web of deceit? As if responding to his inner turmoil, the diner's bell jingled, announcing the entrance of several patrons. Their laughter and chatter felt distant, a reminder of the normalcy existing outside their bubble of conflict. Did he truly want to step into a world where subterfuge reigned and honesty was compromised? The stakes are high, he muttered, grappling with the implications. Lily placed her hand on his. We're in this together, Tony. Whatever you uncover, however you decide to navigate this, remember it's about the journey of becoming who you are meant to be. The warmth from her touch surged through him, fortifying his resolve. They were each other's anchors, paralleling their struggles, yet their separate paths still loomed, waiting to intersect at critical moments. With his own self-doubt shrouded in uncertainty, he pushed aside thoughts of collateral damage in favor of the immediate steps they could control. Just before they left, Tony looked into Lily's eyes, determination fusing with dread as he stated, "We have to move quickly. The confrontation is inching closer, and I need to understand what I'm unleashing in myself before we meet Marino." With those words, he felt the weight of accountability settle on his shoulders, the responsibility to not just confront Marino, but to confront himself. As they stepped outside, the cool air bit at his skin, a stark reminder of the reality ahead. The shadows loomed larger than before, and a new question enveloped him: what would happen to the man he had yet to fully discover within, once the storm had passed? The moment of truth drew near, tangled with the layers of his own identity waiting to be unraveled. Tony felt the cool air wrap around him like a shroud, a stark contrast to the warmth of the diner he had just left. The bustling streets around were alive, but they faded into a blurred background as he became engulfed in his thoughts. What if the strategies they concocted unraveled him instead? What if the narrative he crafted not only exposed Marino but also one he hadn't anticipated about himself? Walking alongside Lily, he scanned their surroundings. The vibrant colors contrasted deeply with the murky anticipation building within him. Each step felt heavier than the last, symbolizing the weight of his decision, one that would require more than just a clever scheme. It would require him to confront the enigma of his own identity amid manipulation. "Let's start getting the lay of the land," he suggested, his voice firm yet subdued. They ventured into a quieter alley that felt both constricting and liberating. It was a place where the chaotic noise of the street faded into whispering secrets. The idea of gathering intelligence, not just on Marino but on himself, became their focus. Lily's enthusiasm shone through her determination. "There must be people who know him better than anyone. We can start there." In that moment, Tony was struck by an idea. What if they sought out Marino's closest confidants? By getting inside their heads, they might uncover vulnerabilities, motivations, and perhaps their own unexpected strengths. And if we can manipulate their perceptions of him, turn them against him, that might shift the power dynamics. Excitement crackled in the air, yet Tony felt a pulse of trepidation at the thought of manipulation. It gnawed at him, a dark undercurrent that threatened to drown out his intention. He had always held storytelling as a means of connection, a bridge between people, not a manipulative tool. Would he truly take those narrative skills and twist them into deception? As they proceeded deeper into the alleyways, the shadows lengthened. A voice from within shouted for him to consider the morality of their budding strategy, insisting that every person they would include in their machinations was human, with lives and emotions of their own. "Tony." Lily's voice pulled him from the depths of his contemplation. He glanced over at her, the concern in her eyes palpable. "Are you with me?" "Yeah," he replied after a moment's hesitation, yet doubts lingered. It's just the more we get into this, the more I feel I might lose a part of myself. Lily nodded, her expression sympathetic. The fight and the person behind it are one and the same. You don't need to sacrifice who you are. Instead, use who you are to navigate this dark territory. Remember, your gift for storytelling can emphasize truth even within a web of deceit. Her belief in him struck a chord, yet Tony battled to resolve the conflict within. Could he mask himself in a facade without losing his core? Not just in this conflict with Marino but going forth in a world where deceit and dominance fought for space. The uncertainty chiseled away at his confidence as they walked. Each step spoke to a deeper fear, one of losing his identity in a battle that seemed to eclipse his moral compass. Suddenly, a thought pierced through his turmoil: what if he approached this challenge as an opportunity for growth? Not merely against Marino but as a means to forge his own path, crafting a new narrative of resilience and authenticity. He glanced at Lily, sensing a kinship that transcended the immediate confrontation. Perhaps they could build a narrative that merged truth and deception, one that revealed not only the weaknesses of enemies but also their own potential strength. Just as they neared a dimly lit cafe rumored to host Marino's associates, an even more pressing question clawed at him: how deeply could they dig into the darkness of others without being consumed by it themselves? "Tony, I think I found something," Lily whispered, pulling him back into reality. They stood in front of the cafe, and Tony felt the electric weight of possibility. As they stepped inside, he realized the next move would require not just cunning but an audacious leap into the unknown. Would he find clarity, or would he lose himself in the labyrinth they were about to enter? Inside the cafe, the atmosphere was thick with muted conversations and the scent of rich espresso. Tiny lights overhead cast a warm glow, creating a deceptive tranquility amidst the clandestine dealings that unfolded around them. Tony's heart raced, the unease clashing with the anticipation of a new beginning, the opportunity to reclaim his narrative in a convoluted world. Lily led him to a secluded table, her eyes scanning the room, assessing every exchange, every flicker of expression. She had become the engine of their investigation, while Tony felt like the hesitant passenger, wrestling with the hangover of morality that weighed him down. Could he, standing here, recalibrate his identity to serve his ambitions without being engulfed by the darkness? "Do you see anyone familiar?" he whispered, feeling the pressure of expectation building. "Not yet." She paused, fixing him with a steady gaze. "But we need to be ready. This might get complicated." With each passing moment, he could feel their mission evolving from mere strategy to a reckoning of who he was destined to become. They were there to gather insights, yet every beat of his heart echoed the risk of what could happen if they found not just Marino's weaknesses but their own truths deep in the shadows. Tony took a deep breath, attempting to tether himself to that fleeting thought of growth. "Let us focus on Marino's inner circle," he murmured, the realization dawning that each piece of information gleaned would serve a dual purpose. It was a treasure of manipulation but also a mirror reflecting their inner selves. "We need to arm ourselves with their stories as well." The word stories ignited something within him. Storytelling, his original tool of connection, started feeling more like the weapon he feared it could become. Tony felt a surge of ideas igniting his mind. What if he didn't aim only to expose Marino but to portray him as a character in a grand narrative? A narrative that encapsulated the darkness while illuminating their own fight for moral clarity and identity. Could he encapsulate distortions in truth while maximizing connections with people who knew Marino? Moments later, a group of men entered, laughter cascading around them. Tony recognized one: Gino, Marino's right-hand man. The very sight sent shivers crawling up his spine. Gino wasn't just a confidant, he was a key to the inner workings of Marino's mind. For a moment, Tony was struck by the idea of approaching Gino not as an adversary but as a character. A conversation could reveal not only Marino's secrets but provide insights about loyalty, betrayal, and the contest for power that twisted them all. "Gino is here," Tony said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now or never," Lily encouraged, her eyes gleaming with their shared resolve. As Tony watched Gino, his solid demeanor resounded painfully familiar, the struggle between personal loyalty and the danger it invited. His past reverberated within him, reminding Tony of the close-knit ties he had with those he once fought to protect. How similar it felt to Marino's world of deceit, yet grounding in authenticity. "We can frame this as an inquiry," Tony said, feeling more assured in his character. "A way to connect and uncover, not just for us but to make sense of Marino's influence on everyone around him." With a newly fortified purpose, he stood up, adjusting his posture as he mentally prepared himself, not just for the confrontation with Gino, but for the revelation of his own complexities. Tony's stride toward the group was laden with a mixture of determination and apprehension, the narrative he was about to engage in pulsing with uncertainty. Would this dialogue serve merely to unlock Marino's darkness, or could it evolve into an intriguing exploration of the human condition? As he approached, a chance encounter with Gino could either solidify Tony's identity or unravel it completely. "Let us see how this unfolds," Tony thought, each step drawing him deeper into uncharted waters where stories intertwined, threads pulling tighter around personal truth and deception. But just before he reached the table, a woman's piercing gaze locked onto his, a stranger, yet an embodiment of the enigma he was desperate to confront. What secrets did she hold, and how would she play into his quest for clarity amidst darkness? Tony, the broker, Romano stood at a crossroads. The confrontation with Gino at the cafe had unveiled more than just the threats lurking within his past, it opened the door to an understanding of himself that had long stayed dormant. As the haze of anxiety cleared, clarity washed over him. No longer would he let fear dictate the boundaries of his existence. The encounter with Gino solidified a choice that swelled within him, a realization that he could redefine his narrative. Each question he formulated aimed to expose the truths shrouded in deception, and he sensed the power that came from wielding knowledge. With each interaction, every subtle tug on the threads of conversation, he grasped how much his past experiences had prepared him for this moment. As their conversation unfolded, Gino quickly fell into a false sense of ease. The bravado that masked his insecurities flowed like clockwork, but Tony wasn't intimidated. Recognizing the shifting dynamics allowed him to maneuver through the layers of bravado and uncover motivations that he could leverage to his advantage. The slow realization struck that he wasn't merely a product of his upbringing, he was a force to be reckoned with. With Lily beside him, their synergy blossomed like a well-honed team, strategic yet authentic. The insights gathered throughout their discussions offered not only ammunition against Marino but also a profound understanding of loyalty and the intricacies of human connection. As Lily captured their shared learnings, Tony recognized that this partnership nourished a part of him he had long neglected. Leaving the cafe, a new sense of purpose anchored him. The defining moment emerged. This wasn't just about navigating the Mafia's treacherous waters, it was about standing firm in the man he wished to become. Each footfall resonated with uncertainty yet felt liberating. The weight of his decisions resonated through him, evolving into a strength that ignited his confidence. Days passed in a whirlwind of strategy and preparation, but beneath it all lay a crystallizing truth: Tony was more than a mere player in this underworld, he was the architect of his redemption. The choice to embrace vulnerability as an ally began transforming the way he viewed himself. The dark entanglements of his past no longer shackled him, they became stepping stones toward a future built on integrity. It was on a sun-drenched afternoon, amid the bustling streets, that everything converged. Gino's information had provided the leverage they needed, not only unearthing Marino's vulnerabilities but dragging Tony's fears into the light. Facing Marino wouldn't come from a place of cowardice or false bravado, it would stem from the burgeoning confidence grounded in acceptance. In the decisive meeting with Marino, every fragment of doubt within Tony evaporated. This time, he walked into the confrontation not burdened by shame but buoyed by realization. He stood opposing Marino, poised not as an adversary with rancor but as an equal ready to challenge the shadows of the past. The conversation that unfolded was one of power, not dominance, it championed clarity, not mere strategy. "I'm stepping out of your narrative, Marino. I'm redefining who I am," Tony declared, his voice steady yet resonant. With a steel-like confidence, he laid bare the truths he had uncovered not just about Marino, but about himself. Honor, connection, and a clearer understanding of his purpose drilled through the core of his identity, revealing a man reborn from the ashes of his dark legacy. The acknowledgement etched on Marino's face signaled a turning point. Acceptance of his choices replaced the rage that once thrived in that space, and as the tension lifted, Tony experienced a genuine sense of fulfillment. He had transformed a pivotal moment into one of empowerment. He had become not only the man who faced that darkness but also the champion of his own life. Stepping away from that encounter, he was no longer Tony, the broker, but simply Tony, a man of resolute integrity and compassion. The final realization. Settled, he had not only conquered his external adversary but had vanquished the internal struggle that had long plagued him. With the past acknowledged but unbinding, he moved forward, heralding a future where each choice was rooted in the strength he found within. Tony's journey of transformation exemplified an individual triumph against the odds, forging a path from shadows into the light. He had proved that growth could arise from confrontation, that vulnerability could be a source of strength, and that he had the power to define his own narrative wherever it took him next. Before you go, remember that true champions of personal growth do not just walk away, they act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference. Comment your thoughts and reactions about this incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of transformation. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support is invaluable.